Hello, my name is Mark Rivett, and I am the Programme Director for Family Therapy and Family Psychotherapy training at the University of Exeter, UK, which is in the west of England. And I'm talking to you from Wales, which is where I have my clinical base as a family therapist in eating disorder services. In these few minutes, I'm going to introduce some of the themes of my paper, which is being published in Family Process, entitled Relational Lockdown and Relational Trauma in the Time of Coronavirus, a reflection from a UK family therapist. In this paper, I review very quickly some of the ideas that are emerging in the systemic world about what we have gone through and the consequences for what we have gone through. And there are two particular themes that I introduce. The first theme is the idea that we have not just gone through a lockdown, we have gone through a relational lockdown, and that's what makes it so important and significant from a systemic perspective. The spread of our relationships, the contact that we have with people in a face-to-face way has been radically altered. And that has huge consequences for how we have lived our lives. It has consequences for our well-being. It has consequences for the long-term relationships that we are going to have. In particular, in the paper, I suggest that the consequences may be connected to the stage in the family life cycle that particular people are in, that if they are singletons, then their dating life will have changed. If they are singletons on the verge of a committed relationship, then things might have changed in terms of how committed they are and whether they've moved in together through the period of the lockdown. In terms of families, things have changed in terms of hot housing of relationships, being with each other 24/7, schooling our children, etc., etc. If families are in the stage of life cycle where the children have left home, then there are issues around how the couple relationship has coped with this intense lockdown process. So that's the first idea that I propose, that it's a relational lockdown that we've been managing, and it's not just a lockdown. The second point that I raise in the paper is that our societies have gone through a relational trauma. This is a concept that is not mine. It comes from Schoenberg and Frankl at the Ackerman Institute. But my point is that this relational trauma that our societies and our families have gone through is something new in the field of systemic psychotherapy. Systemic clinicians have talked about trauma as a war situation, as a natural disaster situation, and the angle that emerges in that literature is very different from the angle that will emerge, I am confident, out of this pandemic trauma that we have all gone through. And one of the quite unique factors which I point out in the paper is that all the systemic literature around trauma talks about communities building support, about families working together to help each other through, and that there is a strength that emerges from the trauma. One of the curious things about the pandemic is that it's encouraged us to be suspicious of each other. The person that lives next door, the person that delivers your groceries, the person who serves you in the supermarket might well be an asymptomatic carrier of coronavirus, may well give you an illness. So for all the conversation, which has in the UK been very prevalent about working together, there is a fear of the other, which is ingrained in a pandemic situation. And I propose that that is going to mean the way our societies emerge from this pandemic is going to be very different in terms of managing the trauma than they would if it had been a war situation or a natural disaster situation. So those are the two main themes that I propose I raise in this paper. Lastly, I comment that both of these are going to have huge influences on how we practice family therapy. In the UK, the online therapy world had been barely born in the family therapy tradition. Now, all of us, myself, all my colleagues have been online for 3 months, working with families through different kinds of packages. And this is going to have an influence on what we do in the future, and it's going to influence probably what we do in the future. And we cannot yet know what that will be, although in the paper I make a few hints and predictions. So that's the paper. I really recommend that you read it. I recommend that all of us across the globe enter the conversation about how has coronavirus influenced our practice, how has it influenced the families that we see, what kinds of themes are emerging, trauma, grief, loss, and that we all think together about how this places our profession in the future. Please enter the conversation, please read the paper, and by all means email me so that we can keep the conversation going. Thank you.